Hello my lovelies, welcome back to my channel. I'm Steph and this is the Novelty Corner, and today I am sharing with you my weekly reading wrap up for the week of the 16th to the 22nd of April. And I read 4 books this week. I read a total of 1,736 pages, and this total takes me up to 74 books read so far this year, which is pretty good. The first book that I read this week was Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, which is her new release. This book I received in my Fairy Loot box and I loved this book. I actually don't think I have words to adequately describe how much I enjoyed reading this, except to say that I can't put it into words, because the writing is just Laini Taylor's beautiful writing style, so descriptive without being over the top. It's one of those books that I think to really appreciate it, you have to go into it as blind as you can. I knew nothing about what the book was. I didn't know who the characters were, didn't read the blurb, I didn't do anything. I just read it blind, and I'm so glad that I did, because I went into it with no expectations and was just blown away. I love the air of mystery and magic and the dreaminess of this, because the characters in this book are dreamers, and it's not dreamers in the sense of daydreamers, it's actual dreams, and it's just beautiful. So while this may be a really inadequate review of the book, all I can say is if you are a fan of fantasy or you're a fan of Laini Taylor's writing, do yourself a favor and absolutely read it. It may look huge, but it is so worth it. And I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read this week was Lady Midnight by Cassandra, which is the first book in the Dark Artifices series, and I was trying to be optimistic. Lots of people had told me that The Infernal Devices was a good series and that Lady Midnight was better than the Mortal Instrument series, which you may know that I really didn't like City of Glass at all, and I have no intention of continuing with that series. So I was going into it hoping that this one would be better, and unfortunately it was not. That's all I can say. For those of you who may not be aware of Cassandra Clare's Shadowhunters books, this is the 3rd series in the Shadowhunters world. It follows Emma Carstairs and Julian Blackthorne. They are parabatized, so they are Shadowhunters, and they are bound together as partners, and they are supposed to be purely platonic partners. And as you can imagine, that doesn't last. Emma is investigating a series of murders that seem to be connected with her parents' murders a few years earlier. It eventually involves downworlders and fairies and all sorts of things. Anyway, I'm not going to explain this properly because I'm not invested in this world. I found both Emma and Julian to be quite flat characters. The only character that I really enjoyed reading about was Mark Blackthorne, and the other younger Blackthorne kids. They were quite interesting characters to read about. This book is just shy of 700 pages, and it probably could have been half the size of it. Part of the reason that this book frustrated me so much is that Cassandra Clare repeats herself repeatedly, not just once or twice. The same information comes up over and over again, and I know you guys love this book, but I did not grow up with Cassandra Clare's writing. No, wait, I'll correct myself. I grew up with her fanfiction, and I loved her fanfiction. This, I don't like. I can't help it. I ended up giving this 2.5. It's probably closer to 2. If you liked it and you love these books, I'm so happy for you. They just don't do anything for me. The next book that I read was The Secret of Nightingale Wood by Lucy Strange, and this is a middle grade children's book, and this was beautiful. It was absolutely stunning. It is the story of Henrietta, who goes by Henry, and her family. They've recently moved to Hope House right near Nightingale Wood. She lives with her mother, her father, her baby sister, who they call Piglet, and Nanny Jane. Prior to the beginning of this book, Henry's older brother was killed, and we don't find out the circumstances around that until a little bit later in the story. And as a result, her mother is suffering from what we the readers would know to be depression. She's being treated by a doctor who basically is determined to have her admitted to a psychiatric facility. It takes place in 1919, so obviously he's trying to claim that Henry's mother is insane and incapable of looking after herself or her children. He heavily medicates Henry's mother and also forbids Henry from having any interaction under the premise that it will just make her mother worse. At the same time, her father is called away overseas to work. Henry is left in the care of Nanny Rose. As Henry settles into her new home, she begins to explore the woods, and she begins seeing visions of her deceased brother. she also meets a strange woman in the woods who she believes to be a witch. This was just so beautifully written. The writing style was absolutely gorgeous. It really has that old-fashioned children's book sense about it. I don't know how else to describe it. It was just like being transported to another time. There were many things about this book that I found difficult. Reading about how Henry's mother is treated and how Henry herself is treated by characters in this book, you know, I felt so deeply for them, and some of it was absolutely terrible. Henry was such a strong female character. She's only a little girl. She's trying her best to be a grown-up in a situation where she shouldn't have to be a grown-up and she should have support. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. I highly, highly recommend it if you spot it. And just look at this beautiful cover. It's so stunning. The last book that I read this week was Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur, which is a book of poetry. And this book will be very familiar to most people on BookTube. It is a very, very popular book of poetry. I enjoyed it. I liked the format. I quite like this style of poetry, and I know perhaps it maybe not the best example of this particular style, but I really enjoyed reading it. It is broken up into 4 chapters. The first 2 chapters are probably the most confronting chapters in the book, so the poetry in there sort of caught me off guard a little bit because it does deal with sexual abuse, it deals with trauma. I wasn't expecting it because, again, even though people talk about this, I don't take that sort of information in because I like to read books blind. My favorite part of this book was the last chapter, which is all about a woman finding her strength and being independent and being strong. That is what really resonated with me. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And now something a little bit different that I haven't done in my weekly wrap-ups so far this year, but I'm going to share with you my TBR for next week because I actually know what I'm going to be reading. Last week I sort of just picked up books as I finished them, so I just went through the bookshelves and browsed them. Yeah, this week I've got a few things to read and review, and I've got a book that I have to read for a blog tour that's coming up, so I've got a fairly set TBR, and I thought I would show you what it is. The first book that I'm going to be reading is Watch Over Me by Claire Corbett. I would also like to read If Wishes Were Horses by Carly Lane, and this may just be a nice breakup to all of the heavy content type books that I've been reading. Spellslinger by Sebastian D. Castell, which I'm very curious to get into this one. And last but not least, I finally signed myself up for my local library. Most of you know how I moved recently, and I finally, went and got myself a library card because I think that's going to be important at some point. One series that I have been really interested in reading is a series by Mindy Arnett. And do you think I can find the first book anywhere in a bookstore? No, but this came into the library today. I had it on hold and it arrived and I picked it up. So I'm hoping that I'll get to this and then I will put on a hold for the second book, which is Polaris. So these are the books that I read this week. Pretty good reading week. In the comments below, let me know what you have been reading. I would love to hear from you guys. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're having a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye guys.